Well, we finally made it. We reached the end of 2022. But before we begin to look forward to another year of dystopian corruption, let's engage in a little look back on the year that was in the form of an award show. Not just any award show, we're going to hand out awards to this year's biggest losers. Trash awards for the trashiest people and institutions whose contributions played a big part in the transformation of our country into a hellscape. The awards for the biggest losers this year signify decorations for dereliction, kudos for corruption, accolades for abuse, laurels for laziness, and trophies for terribleness. Our first category is the award for most ungrateful scold. Hands down, this award has to go to Meghan Markle, the former member of British royalty and professional crier when she's on camera. Meghan and her former prince of husband Harry, who claims to be a tortured soul himself, have renounced their obligations to the British royalty, but want to keep as much of their royal brand, money, security, and lifestyle as possible, in order to start a kind of media grift, knocking the British royalty. This was most aptly exemplified in their countless interviews, whether that be with Oprah or in their own multi-part documentary on Netflix. The only documentary to show a tortured couple living in a $30 million home in Montecito, yet who claim to be victims. And literally, no one on the entire planet gets why Meghan has chosen this course of action. If Harry and Meghan truly hated the media, as they claim throughout their documentary, then they could have chosen to live a quiet life out of the limelight, away from the media. But no, they love media attention, and a camera crew is Meghan's best friend. That's why she hired one to photograph her when she went to pay her respects to victims of a school shooting. Very heartfelt, Meg. And you can't let that photo op pass you by. I don't think this Netflix documentary will be the last time Harry and Meghan make a deal with the media for big money by conducting interviews where they shed some tears and try to grab headlines. Keep in mind, most people would have been happy to become a prince or princess and get paid to live a life of luxury and service, but not Meghan. She always wanted to be a Hollywood actress. Her name in lights, center stage, and she knew that a life of British royalty was going to be too service-oriented for her. And she'd never ultimately be number one in England, with Kate always ahead of her to become queen. Being royal wasn't good enough for Meghan. A literal fairy tale ending wasn't enough for her, so she's taken it upon herself to destroy all possible avenues for that and instead cut Harry off from his family. So she dragged Harry out to California so she could be the celebrity, the actress, the activist she's always wanted to be. He was complicit too, don't get me wrong. He's just as much to blame as she is for the fake victim narrative. The only problem with Meghan's dream of being an actress is she isn't that good at acting, and her true colors have come out. Most people in the UK view her highly negatively, and more people in the US view her negatively than Kate Middleton. She also only knows how to play one part, the part of the "no, she made me cry" Karen. That Johnny one-note act can only last so long. Congratulations, Meghan, on your award. And remember, always bring a tissue when you're about to cry about your hard life on camera. Runner-up for this category goes to Jen Psaki, who certainly knows how to scold America as if she's the queen know-it-all and the rest of us are idiots who just ordered treadmills online. Remember when she made that comment during the supply chain crisis? Our second category is the award for biggest walrus of the year. Again, very little competition here. This award goes to former Trump attorney General Bill Barr and future food tray runner for Golden Corral. This is the person who confessed on camera that he was surprised to hear Biden discount as fictional the story of his own son's laptop, full of crime, drugs, crime, corruption, crime, treason, and more crime. Bill Barr would have us believe that this shocked him, while at the same time his own Department of Justice and FBI were working with social media companies to illegally suppress and censor a bombshell story that he himself admits was 100% true. Congratulations, Barr, on your role in backstabbing the American public and smothering elections with your bare hands. What was the bribe, Bill? A box of Krispy Kremes? Remember, Bill, always wear a hairnet when around food. Runner-up for this category goes to Alexander Vindman, who was disqualified on the basis that he may not even be real. After serving as a deep state puppet for the failed impeachment of Donald Trump, his Twitter account was caught red-handed, spewing the same stock statement that a host of bot accounts had also posted. So suspected person Alexander Vindman could be a puppet or a robot. More research is required. Our next category is the award for worst violation of trust. This was actually a crowded field, but this award has to go to the media, if only for the sake of raising awareness. And that's largely because the media itself has yet to admit that the jig is up. They are still pretending the incredibly damning Twitter files were never released. Unfortunately for them, there is already copious evidence that, like Twitter, Facebook, Google, and everyone else, they too were taking marching orders directly from corrupt government overlords. You may ask yourself, how can we know this? After all, there are no CNN files or MSNBC files yet. Well, the magic ingredient here is logic. Note that over the past few years, the only outlet to complain of censorship was the New York Post, specifically in relation to the Biden laptop story, published by the New York Post. Now consider two facts. One, no other outlet complained of being censored. Two, there were a host of highly important stories which could have broken but weren't. Stories having to do with coercive state power in the fields of disease, medicine, and elections. In other words, the kind of stories any real journalist would have jumped at the opportunity to break. But not the mainstream media. What did we get from them? Silence. Silence on these bombshells and not a peep about being censored. Silence gives consent. I think it's pretty safe to say that the reason the mainstream media is hiding from the Twitter files is the same reason they've never complained about being censored and the same reason all their stories line up exactly with the narratives of the deep state. They're in on it. And as a wise meme astronaut once said, always has been. Runners-up for this category of worst violation of trust goes to the RNC leadership, generally, and Dr. Fauci. Naturally, we also considered the U.S. government. They were ultimately disqualified because you have to put your trust in the government in the first place in order to violate that trust. And speaking of lack of trust, let's get right to our next category, Kangaroo Court of the Year. Again, this was a crowded field. It is Biden's America, after all. But ultimately, this award goes to the entire D.C. Federal Court District. Located at the heart of American corruption in our nation's capital, this swamp court district will be forever remembered as one of the most egregious examples of injustice in the history of our country, rivaling even the memory of the most bigoted courts in the old Deep South. D.C. has proven that its judges carry some of the most extreme and unhinged biases, a depth of prejudice that can only be rivaled by the juries. How else can you explain the fact that they take seriously the claim of the Department of Justice that a protest which dispersed peacefully in time for curfew should be treated as a violent military action that almost toppled our government? This premise wouldn't even pass as a plot device on a Netflix series. You also have to take into consideration that the same Department of Justice bringing these charges is responsible not only for making up every story about Alpha Bank, Russian collusion, and the Steele dossier, but they also actively hid the fact they knew it was all made up for years. And for some reason, the judges still all pretend like this very same organization is as pure as the driven snow when it comes to bias against Trump supporters. The D.C. district courts are so biased that a conservative can be sentenced to years of jail for having unapproved thoughts, while the corrupt liars behind the Steele dossier, prosecuted under Durham, get off on the technicality that the jury couldn't possibly read their minds. Every outcome is predetermined, and the law only works in one direction. Congratulations, D.C. Federal Court District. Like I said, they had some tough competition. Runners-up include any court that tried Alex Jones. These are the courts that made ridiculous demands that Jones pay penalties larger than the GDP of most countries. Another runner-up is, of course, Maricopa County Judge Peter Thompson, who believes chain of custody laws are mere suggestions and that a law which does not require proof of intent, in fact, requires proof of intent. Finally, our award for biggest self-own. This has to go to disgraced former FBI attorney James Baker of Twitter, who was caught red-handed trying to cover up the FBI's involvement in directing state censorship when the idea that the FBI could have been involved in covering up that story was still a hypothesis. So thanks, Jim, for proving the point even before the question could be asked. Runners-up in this category are also numerous. We have Yoel Roth, who defended Twitter's policies only to be caught facilitating the termination of the account of the U.S. president, an action which he himself thought baseless. We have Hollywood, who still can't take a hint that their woke sermons are the worst substitute for actual stories, and as a result lost billions of dollars. Disney alone lost $50 billion, and is still doubling down on dumb. Maybe they're aiming for a 2023 Biggest Loser award. Tune in at the end of next year to find out. The liberal majority also came close to continuing as the thought police, but fortunately Elon Musk threw a wrench in their censorship game. Today, everyone knows any semblance of the popularity of leftism on social media is the result of highly curated narratives and censorship of their popular ideological adversaries. Now that they don't control the narrative on Twitter, they no longer defend Twitter by saying, hey, it's a private company. They now want Twitter itself censored, and even Elon Musk investigated. But that's less of a self-own and more of a got-owned by people who value things like truth, justice, and the American way. Honorable mention for biggest self-own goes to the local San Francisco media for fawning over two obviously fake Twitter employees, Ligma and Johnson. Ligma and Johnson pretended to be engineers fired by Elon Musk. The supposedly tech-savvy media missed the fact that their made-up names were obvious references to meme culture and so utterly beclowned themselves in the process. That's all I got for awards for now. We hope you enjoyed our first annual Biggest Loser Award Show. And hey, if you liked my awards here, please let me know on social media. I'm at Dinesh D'Souza Gill. And let me know what you thought. Is there a category you'd like me to add for next year? If you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble, we'd like to hear from you in the comments.